Between 1987 and 1989, I worked at a very popular clothing boutique called Merry-Go-Round, located in the Grand Avenue Mall in downtown Milwaukee. That job and that mall attracted a wild assortment of characters, from celebrities that were in Milwaukee for concerts and films, suburban kids and parents having a foray into the city, to hardened drug dealers who were looking to relieve themselves of copious amounts of extra cash. The recipe for Merry-Go-Round's success was simple: hire a really attractive staff, play the most popular music, and let the staff flirt their way to as many sales as possible. Every day was an adventure going to work, but little did I suspect how impactful one day would ultimately prove to be. One day, sometime between 88 and 89, I'd just gotten off the city bus on Wisconsin Avenue. I walked towards the main entrance of the mall and noticed some scrubby-looking guy watching me intently. This guy had an olive-colored army-issued jacket, one that looked like it was from the 70s, with very greasy slick-back hair, and a very unkempt stubbled face. My immediate thought was he was probably some homeless wacko of whom I was immediately dubious. His back propped up against the restaurant that was attached to the mall, and his gaze was disturbingly focused on me. While a couple of paces away from him, he asked me if I had a cigarette, to which I replied, "I don't smoke." I passed him in stride, figuring that was the end of that encounter. I couldn't have been more wrong. This dude had come behind me and said, "Actually, I'm new in town, and I'm looking for a good time." I'll never forget the feeling that I'd been assaulted. His presence was one that both enraged and disgusted me. I turned abruptly and responded. Instantly, the guy turned and walked away rapidly. I stood for a moment staring in his direction, shocked and baffled as to what just happened. I regained my composure and headed into the mall. As I rode the escalator to the second level, I remember vilely cursing under my breath, calling him every manner of names I felt described him, his audacity, and the situation, and that was it. In the summer of 1991, I was a soldier stationed in Berlin, Germany. I remember hearing vague details of some nut cannibalizing people in Milwaukee. To be honest, I didn't pay much attention to the story initially. I also remember hearing about a new movie that they wouldn't show in Milwaukee because of recent events. I didn't know anything about the movie, so I couldn't connect the dots as to why Silence of the Lambs would be such a controversial film for that city. One evening, several months later, I was home watching the news, and there was footage of Jeffrey Dahmer being led into court. He wore an orange jumpsuit, his greasy hair was slicked back, and he had an unkempt 5 o'clock shadow. In that instance, my mind raced back to the day I encountered this same man I was now watching on my TV. From then on, I paid a lot more attention to the story. I learned that the man responsible for getting him arrested was someone Dahmer had picked up at the Grand Avenue Mall, where I worked those years ago. It seemed ironic to me that if he hadn't left my presence so swiftly that afternoon, who knows what would have happened. I grew up in a mining town in the north of England. After all of the mines had closed down in the 1980s, the area went downhill. There were no jobs, no money, and nothing for kids to do. As with most of the north, towns are surrounded with woodlands and farms, so as kids with nothing else to do, we'd go out exploring the woods and build swings, climb trees, make fires, and the usual kid stuff. I was around 6 or 7 years old when the following happened. I met up with 3 or 4 friends one morning, and off we went looking for an adventure. We walked a few hours and passed a few places that we'd already explored, such as caves, farms, and woodlands, when we came to an area of woodlands that we hadn't yet investigated. So in we went. We soon found a stream, so we followed it for maybe 10 minutes and came to a large pond surrounded by trees. Thinking back, it was a spooky spot. Picturesque, but a bit spooky. It was the perfect spot for a rope swing overhanging the pond. So over the course of the following week, we went back to this pond, and after a few failed attempts, made a pretty good rope swing. Over the next few weeks, I'd go back with friends every other day, and we'd hang around this pond. But with it being so far away, not everybody was so keen to walk so far. So the group eventually became just myself and a friend, and we went from going there almost daily to just going there once a week. The two of us head over there one day, and as we're approaching the woods, we could tell somebody else had been there. I'm not sure how we knew. We just knew. We get inside the woods, grab a few sticks for weapons, and follow the stream, keeping our eyes peeled for anything unusual. We get about 100 meters away from a kind of small clearing in the trees, when we both notice in the distance there were dozens of these small objects hanging from the trees. We couldn't quite make out what they were, but from a distance, they looked kind of doll-shaped. We're both on edge at this point, but we'd walked over an hour, so with sticks in hand, we slowly approach these things. We get to within 10 meters of one of the objects, and we still can't quite tell what they are. They look like little bags of fur. Some black, some grayish, some brown. It wasn't until we were almost within arm's reach when it dawns on us. They were cats. Surrounding this small clearing in the woods, there were maybe 20 or 30 cats, dead, hanging from the trees. It looked like something out of a horror movie, and thinking back, we should have just turned on the spot and ran, but being dumb kids and curious, we hung around for a few minutes and looked around. I don't think either of us had seen a dead cat before, so morbid curiosity took over, and we just walked around this clearing, poking a few with our sticks. And that's when we see him. About 30 meters away, we see a man approaching. Typical homeless looking, brown coat, dirty, long, scruffy beard, a dark woolly hat and hood. Once we notice him, he stops. He's just standing there, between trees and bushes, partly camouflaged, staring at us. He was carrying a white plastic bag that was sagging down by his side. I'm gonna hazard a guess here and say that there was another dead cat in that bag. We stand frozen to the spot for maybe 10 to 20 seconds, not quite sure what to do. And he's just standing there, staring, not moving, just staring. My friend and I both nope out at this point and just start running as fast as we could, screaming. I looked back a few times and the man hadn't moved. He was just standing there, facing us, watching us as we ran for our stupid little lives. We get out of the woods and didn't stop running until we reached a busy road, about 10 minutes away. We jogged the rest of the way home, barely stopping to catch a breath, until we reached the safety of our neighborhood. We both went home and didn't see each other until the next day. We told our friends about what happened the next day, and never went back to those woods. We gave him the name, the Cat Man. I dread to think what would have happened to my pal and I if we hadn't seen him and got out of there, but I'm guessing it ended with us hanging from those trees. When I was about 14 or 15, we moved to a new town hundreds of miles away from our old one near LA. The new town was an older, much smaller neighborhood, and it had a very old school vibe. People would leave their garage doors open at night because no one really worried about security. However, my family, coming from a town where you knew better, we never left ours open. One weekend, my parents went out of town to our old city to visit my aunt and uncle, leaving me home alone. I didn't care to go. I wanted to be home alone. I had a couple of friends over. We ordered pizza and just watched rented movies. Around 10 or 11, everyone went home and I was home alone in this big old 5-bedroom house. My bedroom and our family room was upstairs, so when my friends left, I stayed upstairs with the TV on and started to fall asleep on the sofa. At around 1 a.m., I suddenly woke up. I don't remember if I heard something or felt something, but I woke up, almost in a panic. I heard noises from downstairs. I realized I was in the dark with only the light from the TV on. Our family room light was turned off for some reason. I didn't remember turning it off. I jumped up and started turning lights on upstairs. Then I heard footsteps in the dark downstairs, walking across the tile flooring. My dad kept a shotgun in a case upstairs in the spare bedroom, so I knew how to use guns my entire life, and he trusted me with it. Yes, back in the day, it wasn't too bad. I grabbed the shotgun, and it was a single shot, so I loaded one shell and put 3 more shells in my pocket. I walked very slowly downstairs. The stairway was barely lit as the switch downstairs lit the bottom half. I make my way to that light switch, then the front room lamp, then the kitchen light. I go down the hallway to the bottom floor bedrooms, turning on every light I see. I don't hear or see anything out of the ordinary. I checked every room, especially my parents' bedroom and bathroom. I figured that's where a burglar would go for cash or jewelry. I don't see any windows or doors open. I started to think maybe I'm getting spooked over nothing. I make my way back to the stairway and the front room. That front room had another living room that my mom always called the sitting room, as we were not allowed to hang out there. It's where the guests would sit. You know, a fancy room. Anyways, that room had the front door, the stairs leading upstairs, and off to the side, the door to the garage. When I checked that our front door was locked, I then turned to the garage door, and it was unlocked. We didn't always keep that door locked, but something inside me dreaded to open it. I figured I had to check that garage door too. When I opened the door, I nearly crapped my pants. The garage was open. This was impossible. My parents had left earlier that day, and I know for a fact the garage door was closed after they left, because when I was cleaning up my room for when my friends would come over, I took all my dirty laundry to the garage. I would have noticed it was closed at that point. Also, when I said goodbye to my friends, I walked out with them and for sure I would have saw my garage door opened at that time. I turned on my garage lights, and the garage was empty. Just the big door rolled up. I hit the button to close it, and locked the door from the garage to the house. I went back upstairs and pretty much stayed awake all night with the loaded shotgun next to me. The next day, I put the shotgun away unloaded. I went outside to see if someone maybe forced the door open. No tool marks or anything. I looked through the garage and noticed that someone had opened my dad's toolbox. I couldn't tell if anything was missing, but it did in fact look like someone had went through it. I do wonder if what shook me awake was the noise of the garage opening, but was too sleepy to realize it. Had I caught someone inside, I would have shot them, no doubt about it.